Welcome, everyone, to Moxie Bets, presented by Caesar Sportsbook. I'm Katie Mox, and today we're talking the NFL Draft with my guy, the czar of the playbook, the best-dressed guy in sports. Can't tell today because he's wearing a hoodie because we're casual here on Moxie Bets, but the man that owns more three-piece suits than anyone in the world, football game plan, a.k.a. Emory Hunt. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Katie. How are you?
I'm doing fine too. It's nice to we got through the NCAA tournament and the NBA finals are in way, but every time one sport ends, it just means we're an inch closer to football, to NFL season. And obviously, Emory, you're the one that I want to talk to about this because you have done a draft. How many years have you done this draft guide?
In a digital form since 2020. So if someone has bought the guide from 2020 to now, they'll be
Mhm.
sitting on over 4,300 individual scout reports. That's insane.
It is insane. I was looking at the draft guide last night, obviously preparing for this show. And like some of these players I've never even heard of. And you have like a full analysis on all of them. So let's get right into it, right? So what are you looking forward to the most in the draft? Is it the running backs?
I'm looking forward, like honestly, Thursday night, I look forward just to seeing these guys realize a dream, because that's the
Yeah.
most important thing in that part, right? Because we all, you and I, have realized dreams that we've done before. Like I never thought I'd be on a video game. I accomplished that goal. I never thought I'd be on a
Whoa, whoa,
national
whoa. What video
broadcast.
game? What video
Two-
game are you on?
NCAA football 2001.
Hell
So
yeah. So
so
I
I
could
you know so
play Emery Hunt.
you can play with Emory Hunt, the the
Oh
the
my
digital
God. Don't
form,
tempt me
like.
with a good time. I'll make you drop so many balls.
Right. Oh, my rating is super garbage, so I'm probably gonna drop them anyway. Um, but all of those things, right? And so Thursday is about because we all started as fans
Yeah,
of the game and the draft, and to
yeah,
see those guys realize that dream. Then day two and day three is when I really start to focus on, because you kind of know what's gonna happen around. Not know what's
the
gonna
first
happen,
day,
but you kind
yeah,
of have a good
yeah,
idea of what the first round is. But really,
yeah.
day two, day three is when you start to really do the work. So I'll be watching just to see those. It never gets old seeing those guys realize that dream.
No, definitely not. It's interesting, the overall the amount of money that these kids have in college versus when they used to. I mean, now they're walking down the draft carpet dripping in diamonds, which, you didn't necessarily see 5, 10 years ago. But I'm always excited to one, see, yes, people realize their dreams, all of the hard work and sacrifice that they've put in finally come to fruition. And I'm here for the fashion as well because I feel like the fashion, some people wearing crop tops. Remember that from a couple years ago? Some
Zeke.
people have big old suits on. So it's always fun to see what the guys wear, especially now that they've got a lot of money. So looking at these prospects, I mean, I went through I don't even know how many 100 or 1,000 page draft guide last night. Who's your favorite overall prospect?
Favorite? Oh, that's a tough question. It's hard for me to say favorite overall. I know I tend to be partial to the guys that I've watched, that I've called their games over the course of their
Okay.
career. So I've seen them multiple times. So that's like the Monmouth guys or the Morgan State guys. You start to see them develop as freshmen, the sophomore. So I would say Jaden Sheridan out of
Okay.
Monmouth, and also Javion Morton of Morgan State, the slot corner. And the reason why Morton, the running gag when I call these Morgan State games is, oh, this dude is on the all Emory Hunt team. And it never really gets past four players, right? Because I never put out a full team. It's just like, there's always
Yeah.
like four players and that's it. But Javion Morton was always on it, because he was always making a game changing play. And Sheridan is someone that I remember doing the Monmouth University signing day special show,
Mhm.
and Coach Callahan hit me up before I got on the show. He was like, "Yo, you don't like this running back, Emory? He's from Connecticut. He's good." I was like, "Okay." So we watched. I was like, "Wow, this dude. Why is this dude at Monmouth?" And then he's
Mhm.
5'7.5" or what now, 190. But man, this dude is explosive.
So where do you think, where would you like to see him go?
I would like to see him go to a team, like the Broncos, or
Okay.
someone like the Rams, someone that
Mhm.
uses multiple backs but has no
Yeah.
problem in using the smaller guy, because those
Yeah.
guys to me are going to be day three to Sheridan's going to be day three for sure.
Okay.
And Morton's going to be an undrafted free agent type guy. But
Mhm.
Sheridan, I would like to see him go to a committee where he's paired
Yeah.
with someone. He can start as a kickoff returner, but also be explosive as well. No,
Alright.
listen. There's too much already Raging Cajun action in the backfield. We're not usurping my Raging Cajun for a Monmouth Hawk. I'm sorry.
Okay. Alright, well, so then who do you think is overhyped, right? There's always 1 or 2 people in the draft, particularly quarterbacks, I would say,
Bingo.
where everyone's just fawning over them, and look, a lot of these quarterbacks end up being busts, you know what I mean? A lot of number 1 overalls don't really translate into what, Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy has translated into. So who do you think is overhyped this year, Emory?
Well, that's let's bring up Brock Purdy, right? Because even with what you've seen and known of Brock Purdy, and you've seen him do, you're still not taking Brock Purdy top 5 in the NFL draft.
No.
And so I
Well, they
feel like,
no, no. Well, but then,
you,
okay, let's talk about who's overhyped, who went over him.
well, no, let's talk about what makes a
Okay.
top 5 pick, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm a
Yeah.
little bit biased.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older than you. And so I always use this as a standard, the 1989 top 5, right?
Yeah, I
Troy
was quite young.
Aikman, Troy Aikman, Deion Sanders, Barry Sanders, Derek Thomas. That is a top 5. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That's 4 Hall of
Yeah.
Famers. Shout out to
Yeah.
Tony Manders that went second. That was the only bust out the group. But you get the point. You're taking elite
Yeah.
level top 5 talent
Shout out to
in
the
the
only bust in the group.
but that's all I'm saying. Like, so with Brock Purdy, you're seeing, okay, San Francisco has elite weapons around him, so Purdy
Uh-huh.
can go in there and do his job. I'm
Mhm.
using that parallel to tie directly to JJ McCarthy. We've seen McCarthy go
Oh,
out
you
there with
I've
a
heard you
very good
say this
offensive.
about him in the past. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's like, and it's people use it as a knock, but it's not a knock. Like, I feel like we all should treat every position as one of 11. So
Yep.
if you're, because no one player is that good, you can't
No.
do it without the other 10. So if you are going into a situation where, hey, I got to do my job, I'm gonna do my
Mhm.
job. And what McCarthy does well, and this is a knock people use against him, but I see it differently. They say, well, he was only asked to throw the ball 15 times. So how good can he be? Well, let's go back and look at, if I was throwing the ball 40 times and I missed 13 throws and I'm 27 out of 40, I say have a good day, right? But if you're
Yep.
throwing it 15, you better complete 12 of those. So imagine the amount of pressure on those 15 throws, right? You may be on a
Yeah.
9 play drive and it's like, well, we didn't throw the ball all series. Like, well, now it's 3rd and 6. We need you to hit this pass. And he was able to hit the pass, right? He did his job. He moved the ball. He didn't throw the ball away. He didn't turn the ball over. And if you're able to do your job, you should be fine. And that's what I feel about Brock Purdy. He's able to do his job, right? But you also need to understand that there's so much around a guy like
Yeah.
McCarthy that helps him do his job rather well. So I feel like McCarthy is getting to no fault of his own. He didn't ask for this. What I would
Right. Right.
what I'm fascinated to see though, I would call Harbaugh's bluff. Like, you talking all this stuff, take him at 5. Sounds like you should take you sound like you're the best quarterback in the draft, right? And he's there
Yeah.
for you at 5, Harbaugh. Take him. Let's see what you do, right?
Okay.
Otherwise, you blowing
Oh,
smoke.
all right. Fair. Yeah, yeah, well, and you know what? I don't think he does take him. I don't
Right.
think he does take him. All right, so let's get into these quarterbacks. Obviously, we know how you feel about JJ McCarthy. You gave Caleb Williams a grade 90. You have a very particular way that you grade everything in your draft guide, but a 90 basically reflects him as potential all pro. Talk about hype.
Well, and you know why and if I was the type to give out 90s to everybody, then it takes away the value of the 90. Guys I've given 90s just off the top of my head, like
Mhm.
quarterbacks. The last 90 I gave was Trevor Lawrence, and before that was Lamar Jackson. Before that, it was Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Back when people thought
Okay.
neither could play, you know what I'm saying? So
Yep.
those are that, like, it's rare that I give out a 90, right? Um, I see
So
that in
okay,
Caleb
so you're
Williams.
you're buying all because there's a lot of hype around Caleb Williams, obviously rightfully so. I mean, he could have gone back to back Heisman if he had a defense. Um, who do you compare him to? Like who of like an all pro? right now, would you say he's like this, right? Because you talk about Trevor Lawrence. Everyone said Trevor Lawrence is going to be the next Andrew Luck. Who's Caleb Williams?
Patrick Rogers or Aaron Mahomes, right? It's like you
I
look at
was like
the,
I was like, I know football, but Patrick Rogers, I see what we're doing here. I see what we're doing
right.
here.
It's
We're
like
mixing 2 of the
there's parts of both, right? The reason why I
Uh-huh,
say Mahomes like is he has that ability that Mahomes has where, you know, and we know this where you may be running there's a pass play, but just because, and this is a life lesson too, just because you're in the route doesn't mean you're in the progression. So when
okay.
you think about a quarterback dropping back and they're
Mhm,
looking front side, there's two guys running the routes. The other two guys are running for the love of the game routes. They're just trying to pull coverage away and just kind of like, get in the way.
right,
But when you're facing a Patrick Mahomes or a Caleb Williams, those guys tend to end up being in play because the quarterback is buying time and these receivers understand like, hey, if I just get open, I know this dude back there is going to find a way to get me the ball, even if I'm not in the progression. So
right.
he has that aspect. But when you look at the scrambling ability and the throwing from different angles, it looks a lot like Aaron Rodgers. And both have, I think all three guys have the deep ball accuracy to where they're connecting consistently with the deep ball. They have the arm strength and the accuracy downfield that makes them a legitimate threat. And on top of the cherry on the ice cream is the fact that they're great athletes, so they can also do damage on the ground too.
All right, I love that, right? So you are a former running back. You could play him in the 2001 edition of NCAA. All right, so you kind of already told us who your favorite running back is in terms of, you're a little bit biased and the guys um, that you have called games for over the last couple years. But I'm a 49ers fan, right? And my favorite player of all time is Frank Gore. I love
Mm.
Frank Gore. It's the first jersey that I ever bought. My family, we used to call him the big. I've got a Christmas ornament of Frank Gore. Like Frank Gore is my guy. Like love him. His son is entering the draft this year. Frank Gore Jr. The Niners pick him up.
They would be wise to. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, if we're leaning all the way into it, like, why not take Luke McCaffrey too? Like, because he in
Oh,
the draft as
I
well.
would love that.
So why not go with the whole family lineage?
Yeah.
And it's funny with Frank Gore Jr. because he's just like his dad in the sense that they both have that Carmelo Anthony body where I just watched you work out. I know you was in the gym, but
Yep.
you have no muscles. Like it's like you just have just the
Yeah.
body, right? But
Uh-huh.
he's a good athlete. He also has quietly 7 touchdown passes on his resume as well.
Yeah.
Because he was a high school quarterback. And
Hmm.
so he could throw the football, he expands your playbook offensively. He has a great football IQ, which is what Frank Gore had, right? You could drop Frank Gore in any era in any style of play, he would be able to excel. I feel like Frank Gore Jr. is getting under talked about, under discussed in this class.
Yeah.
Even though he went to the Shrine Bowl and had a great week, and all you heard coming out of the week was about Isaac Garendo, who's a fantastic player. But Gore Jr. to me is a really good prospect that he can catch, he can run, he can return kicks. He's going to play a long time, just like his dad in the league.
There's no better workhorse than Frank Gore. I mean, the amount of years that he played, and he's such a special person. I believe that he is like an advisor or something with the 49ers right now, too. So maybe he'll advise them to take his son. Last year we saw that really cute moment on the Cowboys, right? When the coach was able to draft his son. So maybe we'll get something like that for Frank Gore Jr. Okay. So you told us that JJ McCarthy is overhyped. Well, what about Michigan star running back Blake Corum? You have ranked him as number 16 on your board, which I think would surprise a lot of people. I think a lot of people have him higher. Why don't you think that his skills will translate in the NFL?
It's not that I don't think his skills will translate, and I don't think he's a great back. It's just that I feel like this class, and a lot of people look at the rankings that way. They'll see 16, but they won't see the grade. But when you look at the grade, you realize I have a stack, a Pringles can full of the same grade of backs, right? So they all kind of like bunched up against one another with a 74.5 grade or 74 grade. So I feel like there's no real true elite first round backs like last
Yeah.
year where I had like, 5 guys with 80s or whatnot. This year is not so much. I don't think I have any guys with an 80 grade. So I just feel like these are a good rotational RB2s. And for someone like Corum, I feel like the long speed is a bit of a question. The threatening of the edge is where you don't see an elite trait for him. But in terms of like he can be a Dion Lewis, he could be a James White for sure, which we know he's those two guys played almost a decade plus in the league. So that's why I feel about Corum. But again, we're gonna put Harbaugh on the spot. You said you had the best quarterback in the country. You had the best running back in the country. You sitting
Mhm.
there at pick 5. One of those
You
guys
got
better be a
tattooed
Charger.
15 he had 15-0 tattooed on his arm.
Yep. So
So
well,
that's
he's like one of those guys better be a Charger by close of business
uh-huh.
on Thursday.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Well, we will wait and see. Let's talk about wide receivers because you did some interesting things here in your draft guide, right? You gave Rome Odunze an 84 rank as a split end wide receiver and Malik Neighbors as an 84 rank as a flanker wide receiver above Marvin Harrison Jr., who is the overwhelming favorite. We'll get into picks later and we'll talk about what the odds are for Marvin Harrison Jr. to be the number one wide receiver off the board. But like, what do you see in Odunze and in Neighbors that makes them more valuable, in your opinion, than Marvin Harrison Jr., who again, overwhelming. He's like minus 1200 or something crazy.
Well, we'll attack these all at all three fronts. Miss Catherine Zeta Mox. Well, let's start with the Doom.
Not my middle name, by the way. He assigned this to me, and I do like it. I do like it.
It kind of works.
It
Um,
does.
with a Dunze is like I like in when you watch a Dunze play, it's like having a glass of Cabernet, listening to smooth jazz, right? He's just fantastic, just smooth, just everything is easy. And when it's easy, it shows you that he's fully confident in his game. He can win off the line of scrimmage. He runs great routes, great hands, late hands. So he's not running down the field like this and slowing himself down. Waste the
Yep.
last possible moment to put his hands up to really snatch the ball out the air. Um, and so that's what, as an ex receiver, you want someone that is consistently great at what they do great. And that's the difference between the great and the good. Neighbors, I use a basketball reference. He gets buckets. Like every time I watch LSU, it's whether it's a short pass, an intermediate pass, or a
Yeah.
deep shot, Neighbors is putting the ball in the paint. And he is just like instant offense. He's kind of like the Jamar Chase of this class. I know they went to the same school, but they play the same game where you could put them on the outside, you could put them on the inside, but they do a great job after the catch. And Harrison, I feel like Harrison I have a Pro Bowl grade on Harrison, right? But people may see him be third behind a Keon Coleman, who also I like his footwork and all those things and his ability after the catch, and think that I don't like Harrison, but that's not the case. The thing
Yeah.
about Harrison for me is two reasons. One, I do feel like he has room to grow in terms of getting better versus bump press.
Hmm.
Has to be a little bit more active with his hands to really work himself off the line of scrimmage because all he's going to see a lot of press as a pro. And second, it's a societal issue where come Monday morning after the draft, we'll have this way too early 2025 mock draft that we'll see everybody put out, right? And people will get married to those first 32 names that they see and kind of
Yep.
carry that throughout the whole season. So if we've talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. being number one since 2023 or 2022, then to the thought of someone maybe potentially being better, what are you even talking about? That's crazy. Like, how can
Yeah.
someone be better? Right. And I think that's what we've seen. Everyone just automatically rubber stamped him number one when
Yeah.
there's potential room for someone to be better. And we've seen that play out this year with how Dunze has played and with how Neighbors has really emerged.
All right. Interesting. And we're going to get into, which wide receiver we think gets off the board first. Again, Marvin Harrison Jr., just ridiculous odds that nobody should bet. But I'm in the similar line of thinking as you are and who gets off the board first. When we look at defense, any prospects that stick out to you, whether it be like an edge rusher or a run stop or any defensive backs, like you don't have to go through all of them, but like what are some defensive guys that we should be looking at to maybe get off the board sooner than later?
Layatu Latu out of UCLA. I mean, he
What a
is a
name.
legit dog, right?
Layatu
And
Latu.
it's perfect. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
it just flows off the tongue.
it
And
does.
It's like he is a fantastic player, and a lot of the things that you hear negatively about Latu, he was injured, the neck, he retired. We heard the same thing
Yeah.
about Jalen Phillips, right? Neck injury coming out of Miami, or coming out of UCLA, he retired, transfers to Miami, balls out, goes undervalued in the draft, and now he's one of the top pass rushers in the league for the Dolphins. Feel like Latu is the same type of guy, and I always point people to the USC game. There is one play where he gets blocked and he's double team. He's on the ground, but he's dog crawling through the block,
Mhm.
chasing the ball with his eyes, and then able to get in on the play still. Like that type of hustle and
Wild.
want to is what you want someone out there on the defensive. I think people say the draft starts at 4 with the Cardinals.
Mhm.
I think the defensive part of the draft could start potentially at maybe 7 with the Titans. I know the Titans need
Yeah.
offensive line help, but they could use someone coming off that edge like Latu. And Latu is someone, to me, if I was the Falcons, I would look at. If I was Titans, I would look at. Even in October, and when the Bears at the time had the first and fourth pick, I was under the assumption that they would keep Justin Fields. I was like, hey, take the receiver at 1
Me
and take Latu at 4 because I
Mhm.
thought that highly of his game.
Wow, that's impressive. All right, so let's talk special teams. Obviously, the 49ers kind of surprised a lot of people last year with their 99 pick in the third round. They took a kicker. Are there any kickers, punters, returners that you think are valuable enough in this draft to maybe not go in the third round, but that people need?
This is a great draft to get kickoff returners,
Okay.
especially when you pair it with the new rules of the return game. So now you can really scheme up better returns. So the reason why I mentioned Jaden Shurden earlier is because it's probably best or advantageous to put a running back there now because he is used to setting up blockers and is used, shows that he can run with patience, burst, and explosiveness. Because when you return kicks, it used to be, well, it still is, but it used to really be about the fastest guy because this is about hitting the lane and going. Punt returns, you could be a little bit slower, you could be shiftier because you just got to. It's like walking down the street in Manhattan, right? You trying to avoid contact with everybody coming at you. You're going against the
Lots coming at you. Yeah.
a lot coming at you, right? And that's a punt return. But a kickoff
Yeah.
return is just about speed. But now with the rule change, you could set up blocking schemes and get creative in how you're setting up
Yeah.
these returns. So we may see a bunch of backs go on day 3, or a lot of guys that have kickoff return experience go on day 3. They may not be the better players than other guys that go undrafted, but because they have their return experience, and it is now going to be a significant part of the game, expect it to happen. So there's a bunch of these guys that can really return kicks.
When you brought up trying to navigate walking in Manhattan, or maybe Edith, my dog, would be a good punt returner because watching her navigate the streets in Manhattan, getting around, it always cracks me up. It's just so funny. She's like on a mission and just maneuvers her way around. So maybe we should draft you, Edith, although she might have aged out. She's going to be 15 soon, so she's a little bit old. We are going to take a quick break here, and we get back. We are making some picks on the draft with our guy, the czar of the playbook, Emory Hunt. Don't go anywhere. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words: Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the type of benefits only Caesars can offer: hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. Welcome back here on Moxie Bets, presented by Caesar Sportsbook. And we are here with Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and the guy that has been doing a draft guide digitally since 2020. And he had hardbacks, I don't even know how much longer, maybe paperback from there. All right. So it's time now to put our money where our mouth is. Or actually, I haven't even given any picks. Put your money where your mouth is. So, one thing that is really fun to bet on in the draft is how many quarterbacks will be drafted in the first round. This line is set to 4.5. It's a typical line for this. The over is juiced to minus 240, the under plus 184. So the question here is there any, look, there's value here, right? With the under at plus 184. Is there any reason to take the under here? I'm going to say no. What do you say?
Who was your major in college, Katie?
Interestingly enough, I went to fashion school and my major was visual communications.
I was a mass comm major in college, minor
Okay.
in theater. So my point
Oh,
is, neither of us took math classes a lot, right? I
oh
probably had
God,
one.
math was not my
Uh,
strong suit. No.
exactly. But these numbers don't make sense, right? When you think about how many teams? Let's do simple math, right?
Yeah.
So teams that need quarterbacks: Chicago, Washington, New England, the Giants. Emphasize the Giants, uh, the Broncos, the Vikings, the Raiders. That's what, 8.
Yep. That all need a
So
quarterback.
that all need a quarterback. Now, Giants, we not see them take one at 6, but don't sleep on them trading back into the first round to get one on the back end, right? Get the fifth year option. So with
Mhm.
all of those numbers and those Emory Hunt analytics laid out for you, I'm gonna go over because I feel like
Yeah.
there's too many teams that need quarterbacks, and
Yeah.
the fifth year option is a thing. And the Vikings already kind of tipped their hand by making an extra trade to get an extra first round pick. So we know they're going to go quarterback. Um, the Broncos are not going to go into a season with Jarrett Stidham if they can get somebody in round 1 to get a fifth year option.
Yeah.
I feel like the over is in play here.
The over is in play, but at -240, like, we're not betting that, right? So it's like,
Right.
if you really thought that there would be 4 or under quarterbacks taken, then sure, take this under at +184, but as you've just said, like, that's just not happening, so maybe this is one that you lay off. When I was looking into this, over the last 15 years, Emory, there's been an average, I think, of 3 quarterbacks per year taken in the first round, but like you said, the expectation this year is that there will be 5 or more coming off the board in the first round. And like, just look at the quarterback class. There's at least 4 of them that are projected to go first round. You got Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, even though you seem to think he's a little bit of a bust. But then you've got Michael Penix Jr., who I know that you were really high on at the end of last season, Bo Nix, and some other day one possibilities. So I agree with you. Like, let's maybe just lay off of this one.
The
So
best
now let's
bet will
talk about,
probably
yeah,
the better bet will probably be to pick which quarterback you think will go in round 1. It's
okay.
probably better
I
value.
actually thought obviously, I mean, but yes, which quarterback you think will go in round 1, but don't necessarily.
Outside of the crazy, right,
I was like,
outside of the
outside of
Caleb
Caleb
Williams.
Williams. Don't take
Right,
Caleb Williams to go first in the draft, guys, all right? Because
right.
the odds on that are also insane. So let's talk about, Emory, what we were chatting about in the previous segment. Who will be the first drafted wide receiver? Since the draft's inception in 1936, just 3 wide receivers have been selected with the top pick. The last one was 1996, Keyshawn Johnson to the New York Jets. We've already discussed Caleb Williams absolutely is going to be the number 1 overall, likely going to the Bears. I mean, it's all but done now. But we did see 4 wide receivers go in the first round last season. So I don't know if you would agree on this, but a lot of analysts are saying that this might be one of the best wide receiver classes that we've seen in a while. Marvin Harrison Jr., the clear favorite, -1200. You and I aren't on this train. You got Malik Neighbors at +450, and then Rome Odunze at +1600. We're not taking Marvin Harrison Jr. One, you're not even laying that much, and you don't really think he's going to go first overall. Of the other 2, who do you like?
Well, and that's the thing, and I do agree with the analyst. I because I think it's more like the 2014 class and
Mhm.
not the 1996 class of receivers, where you got Terrell Owens
Not
in
the
round
Keyshawn
3.
Johnson class?
Right, not that Marvin Harrison Sr.,
Yeah.
Terrell Owens, whose son is also in this draft, by the way, that no one talks about, but
Mhm.
he's a very good receiver. So
Okay.
there's that class 96 was the Tiffany class of receivers. This is more like 2014, where you had the Mike Evans and the Odell Beckhams and the Sammy
Mhm,
Watkins,
mhm.
those type of guys. And we've seen this before, Katie. History is of any indication. If you don't,
Yep.
if you ignore history, you're destined to repeat it. Remember the time when we had Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, Jameson Williams come out? Everyone was like, "Oh, Jameson Williams is clear cut number 1. Waddle was number
Mhm,
2, and Ruggs was the first one
mhm.
off the board, out the 3."
Oof.
So with that being the backdrop, I feel like even though everyone
One had his
understands,
career cut rather short. Yeah.
right, everybody understands how good Harrison is, and he's been talked about as number 1. But the value and potential thing that could happen is Neighbors goes first as a receiver.
Yeah.
So that's why I went with Neighbors.
Well, and that's a good value there at plus 450. I'm looking at the other guy, and you said a lot of great things about him, in our last segment. Rome Odunze at plus 1600. I'm just going full value on this one. You could tell the odds makers don't really think that he's going to be the first one off the board. But when you look back to his season, he had just one game with fewer than 80 receiving yards in the regular season. I think he had just 4 games with under 100. So the guy really could pick up some yardage. He led all Power 5 receivers in yards per reception. I kind of feel like Arizona with their number 4 pick. Look, it's possible that they trade down again like they did last year, but they really do need a number 1 wide receiver for Kyler Murray. And I do think that Adunze fits this bill perfectly. And you noted in your draft guide, he plays a physical game, both with and without the ball. You liked his ability to break physical tackles and make any type of catch necessary. I think that he would be a great fit for Kyler Murray in Arizona. So I wouldn't be surprised at plus 1600 if we get Odunze.
I listen. Last year they took one of my top three, I believe, split end receivers, and Michael Wilson out of
Mm-hmm.
Stanford, who had an issue with injuries coming out of college, but had a great Senior Bowl and was a fantastic receiver when he was healthy. And you pair him up with any one of these three, man, that passing game should be potent.
I love it. All right. So, which NCAA conference will have the most players drafted? So, I didn't see this particular thing on Caesars, but when I looked at the first round, you've got all the conferences in here. The SEC, their line is set to 10. They have the most. The over is at plus 130, though. So, odds maker thinking, maybe it's 9 that goes through. Then you've got the Pac-12. Their line is set to 6.5. Then you got the Big Ten 5.5. ACC 4.5. Big 12 3.5. So let's talk about the SEC because clearly they're going to have the most drafted, right? Over or under 10 players in the first round.
Oh man, I'm gonna say
It's a sharp
over.
line.
It's a
Yeah.
sharp. I would say over, and the reason
Yeah.
why they have the added bump this year of a quarterback, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that kind of pushes because usually we're not talking about an SEC quarterback, but it's because they have the quarterback this year that
Hmm.
kind of pushes them over the hump.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would say over that number, but I'm disappointed that we don't see Sun Belt Conference in there, but one day.
Yeah, and there's some good value there at plus 130. But when you look at these lines, the fact that the SEC's line is set to 10 and it's just 6.5 down to Pac-12, so it's very obvious that SEC is who we're pulling
What
for
what will
here.
boost the SEC this year, and it's always the case with the SEC, is defense and Alabama and Georgia. So think about Alabama has a couple of pass rushers, one definitely for sure. They have two corners that's going to go Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold. Then we get the receivers from LSU. We know they're going first round, both Brian Thomas and Neighbors. You have the quarterback, and then you have the offensive lineman from Georgia, offensive lineman from Alabama. So it
Hmm.
it it, it really works itself out by sheer math.
Yeah. All right. Well, now we're going to talk about my favorite position or my favorite draftee, Mr. Irrelevant. And look, Brock Purdy has made Mr. Irrelevant in the NFL draft. I feel like something that's very important to bettors. Like, right? Maybe people didn't care too much about Mr. Irrelevant before, but now it's something that we can all bet on. So the Jets have been awarded Mr. Irrelevant. They've been known to trade, later. So maybe that doesn't happen. But they got it among some other I can't say this word ever, compensatory picks. So which position you can bet on which position you think is going to be Mr. Irrelevant. And we're thinking about the Jets here, or maybe they trade. What do you think?
So when San Francisco took Brock Purdy, right? And this
Hmm.
is this is czar logic. So they took Brock Purdy with Mr. Irrelevant, Kyle Shanahan, offensive guy. Now we got the Jets, right? Robert Saleh, defensive guy. So I'm obviously it's going to be on defense. I feel like,
Okay.
and I also think linebacker would be the one because of the new special teams rule. You want to get people that can, that are athletic enough to run down on coverage, kick off coverage, and make open field tackles. So I would go linebacker. I was almost going to go safety, but I feel like
Yeah.
linebacker is where they go.
Well, you've got more logic than me. I'm just going to go quarterback because homeboy Aaron Rodgers is old, so they they need to find another Mr. Brock Purdy. As far as I am concerned, and so you went linebacker. And so linebackers at plus 850. I went chalk on this with quarterback. That's at plus 330. So more value and more logic there with Emory's pick. But my friend, the czar of the playbook, the time has come for Mox Locks. Other than Caleb Williams going first, what is your number one bet for the NFL draft?
This one was, and I'm glad I saw this at plus odds because I feel like it has a great chance to happen because of all of what we outlined earlier in the show, talking about quarterbacks, how many quarterbacks can
Yeah.
go, receivers can go. We didn't talk about the run on offensive tackles that's going to happen as well. So with all of that being the case, I feel like we're going to go over 21 and a half offensive players taken in round one, plus 140.
Ooh. Plus 140. That is spicy. I love it. I am going to go, and I love me some Brocks and I love me some tight ends. So give me Brock Bowers. Now, you could bet this two different ways, Emory. You could take him just as a top 10 pick overall. That's at plus 135. Or you can say he's going to be number 10. That's at plus 150. He is the favorite to go number 10. And I'm going back to the Jets here, right? So the Jets have the 10th pick in the draft. And Joe Douglas, their GM, referred to Bowers as a Swiss Army knife, saying that he's the right type of tight end that can be a real weapon. Now, I believe that they're leaning on Aaron Rodgers a lot here and doing whatever he wants. They know they have a limited time window with him. So if Aaron Rodgers wants a tight end, we're getting Brock Bowers. So I like him if you want to go safer, say top 10, and that's plus 135. But I kind of think that the Jets are going to take him with the number 10 pick. That's at plus 150. But, tight end named Brock, come on.
You know who's a fly in the ointment here, and he's made his way into the show already a lot of times? Jim Harbaugh at
Aaron
number
Rodgers?
5.
Oh.
Think about Harbaugh
Oh.
and what he wants to do, right?
You think he's
It's
gonna
all
take
about
Brock?
point of attack.
Mhm.
It wouldn't shock me, right?
Yeah.
Because we
Well,
know they
then
need
all right, then
receiver
let's
help,
yeah.
and he technically can play. He could be that Travis Kelsey for them. They don't have Gerald Everett anymore. He's now, out east in Chicago, and so it wouldn't shock me. That's why I think Jim Harbaugh holds the ultimate wild card because he can go
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
line, he can go receiver, he can even do something like this and go tight end um, because
Well,
it helps
then
the
then
run
you know what?
game.
Yeah, then you take him for the top 10 pick because maybe he goes number 5 to the, Chargers, or he slips all the way down to 10, and then the Jets pick him. That's a plus 135. But, yeah, I'm big Brock Bowers fan, and I just feel like there's also been just a resurgence of the tight ends over the last couple years. You got Kelsey, you got Kittle, you got Laporta, who was an absolute superstar last year. Like, I feel like the tight end position, and then actually, let me just ask you this. Do you feel like the tight end position has become more important over the last couple years?
Yeah, because and this goes back to what we've seen happen in high school ball than college, to where you have the 7-on-7 camps, so you got guys running more routes, more time on task, so they're more apt to be a little bit more athletic and savvy
Mm,
in running routes. And because you have to find an edge offensively, you start to see this at the small school level where they're recruiting these taller, slower wide receivers that the FBS has passed over and just making them tight ends. To now in the draft, you saw a flood of FCS tight ends come out, Ross Dwelly being one of them. We know about Goddard coming out of South Dakota State. They had a run of FCS tight ends that were receivers in high school. Now the FBS started to catch up to where, okay, we got an advantage here. They put out all these corners, but can they cover both size and speed and
right.
skill? And that's where the flex tight end has become prominent. So everyone's trying to chase
Yeah.
which you have already outlined out perfectly.
All right, Brock Bowers, baby. Let's go. Emory, thank you so much for joining the show today. You could find Emory on CBS Sports HQ. You could find him on the Early Edge. You could find him on CBS Sports Network. I know you just did a couple shows coming up for the draft here. You can buy his draft guide right now if you need some extra notes right before we get into it. You can follow him on social at Football Game Plan. Um, it's a little bit different. It's spelled out football game plan on Twitter, I believe, right? And then it's FB game plan on Instagram. Switch them.
It's on
Okay. All right. Switch them the other way.
F ball game
You'll
plan
see.
on Twitter, football game plan
Yeah.
on IG.
Yeah. Anything else where people can find you? Obviously, we got the season coming up here soon. You're going to be doing a ton of stuff on the. Are you going to the? Are they sending you out to the draft?
I'll be down in studio in Fort Lauderdale for day 2 and day 3 and
Nice.
Sunday coverage. So,
Nice.
I would say follow along just for the fashion tips alone.
Oh, I'm telling you people, like and again, we're wearing a hoodie right now, we're wearing a Raging Cajun, it's very casual here, but this man and his three-piece suits and he actually goes to the same suit maker as Tommy DeVito's agent. So, that should tell you everything that you need to know about Emory Hunt. Back here on Moxie Bets with the winner of the Moxie Bets Bracket Challenge, Yousef Yasin. Congratulations. What a feat. How did you do it?
Wow. Thank you, Katie, for the opportunity and the chance to get into the tournament. Um, Really, it was just lady luck, to be quite honest with you. The one,
Yeah,
to be quite honest, I was like, I'm still going, thinking, okay, the other shoe is going to drop eventually, right? It just
yeah.
never did. I'm still a little
So,
surprised
like,
myself,
who
even
were
2 weeks later.
you yeah, so, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of luck that goes into this. I won my family challenge, quite a bit less people in that bracket challenge than the one that you won here on Moxie Bets. But did
A
you
win is a
feel
win.
really yeah, did you feel really strongly about certain teams? Were you like, "No way anyone's gonna beat UConn?" Were there any kind of Cinderellas that you were in on? Like, what tell me a little bit about your bracketology.
Oh, of course. Well, if there's anything I've learned over the last few years, I've always learned to try not to take 6 over 11. I always
Okay,
get beaten up
smart.
on that. So this year I just chose to go 11 over 6 and a few 12s over 5s. Try to pick the underdogs in the first round. What I've learned over the past few years is also there's always going to be the strong teams at the end, but those
Mhm,
upsets always is what get you into the tournament to begin with. So
right.
pick the upsets early, and sometimes you'll see a battle between like a lower level, not a lower level team, but more of
Mhm,
a team in a smaller conference versus a team in a bigger conference, where the team with the SEC is a 10 seed versus the lower conference is a 7 seed. I'll tend to go with
mhm.
the 10 seed over the 7 seed over just name alone.
Okay, very, very smart, like your bracketology thinking. Were you surprised with the Wolfpack? They were my favorite team, of the madness run. Were you surprised how far they got this year?
Very surprised. And to be quite honest, I did have a second bracket, and I did that just for fun because I always say if there's two North Carolina teams that are going to come out of this, it's going to be
Yeah,
Duke and UNC. Well,
right,
Duke and UNC
not
did not
NC
get to the
State.
Final Four, but NC State did. Glad I picked them in the
Yeah.
first round. Wish I would have picked them a little further.
All right, Yusuf, I'm so glad that you're on here, and thank you for sharing your bracketology, but let's get to know you a little bit. So you're from Elizabeth, New Jersey. And you've got some interesting teams here. You're a bit all over the board. You like the Carolina Panthers, the New Jersey Devils, the Philadelphia Phillies, and the New York Knicks. How did we get here, Yusuf? How did we get here?
Well, when I was a kid, I was 10 years old when I watched my first football game. And when that happened, the Carolina Panthers were an expansion team. So I figured if I'm going to be a fan, might as well jump on a team that's brand new.
Yeah.
Uh, I am from New Jersey. I like the New Jersey Devils.
Okay.
Family raised.
Yep.
Born in the 80s. They were a new team as well when they came in. So we jumped on that. The
Okay.
Philadelphia Phillies, being surrounded in the New York area, you got a lot of fans who are Yankees and Mets fans. Sorry if you're listening.
Yeah.
Uh, so figured
Yeah.
try something different so that way you could get a little
Okay.
conversation,
So
maybe
you're
get
more
a
of
little
a
bit
you're it sounds like you're like a contrarian fan, right? It's like you pick the new team in Carolina. Jersey, all right, fine. It was still new. It still felt like a little bit contrarian, but you're doing what everybody else isn't doing, except for the Knicks.
yes. Try to be a little different. Try to throw in a little bit. The Knicks. Well, at first I was. I'm not gonna lie. At first, when I was a kid, I was a Nets fan. And when they were
Mhm.
finally doing well, they got to NBA Finals, and then they said they were going to move out of New Jersey. I felt heartbroken about that. So, again, contrarian. Well, you want to leave me? I'll go across the river and I'll cheer for the Knicks. They'll
Yeah.
be there. So it was
Uh-huh.
like kind of turning to
I
the
like this
enemy when
about
you
you.
least
I like
expect
this
it.
kinda yeah, contrarian side because I grew up in the Bay Area, so I'm just Bay Area sports fan. That's through and through. But I didn't even make a choice. Now, luckily for me, in the Bay Area, much like the New York area, there was a lot of winning going on, so it was not that hard to be a Bay Area fan. But I like that you actually chose the teams that you wanted to root for. So, Yusuf, let's talk about these Knicks, right? They won game one. They've got game two tonight versus the
Oh yeah.
Sixers. Now, it's a 5-point spread. Knicks are favored -5, according to our friends at Caesar Sportsbook. This total 207.5. Any thoughts on this game or the series in general?
The series, I think, is going to. I do think, as much as it pains me, I think it is going to go the distance. I'm glad Knicks
Yeah.
got game one, got out to the head start, but just get this gut feeling that it's the Sixers, and they are
Yeah.
healthier now than they were back in February and March. Embiid is going to have a statement throughout all of this. I do think the Knicks will win this series in seven, but
Yeah.
I do think that the Sixers are going to fight them, and I do believe that the Sixers will probably beat the spread tonight and somehow
Okay.
manage to pull out the win.
Okay, so you like New York to, and look, they always say it's not a series until you win on the road. So the expectation here is the Knicks will clean up on home court, and then of course they go to Philadelphia. And it seems like one, you live in Jersey, which is close to Philly, and then two, you're a Phillies fan. So I think you probably have some inner whatever with some Philadelphia fans here. So yeah, if the Knicks can win on the road, then that's where this goes. But if you're saying Knicks in 7, which by the way, Yusuf, I agree with you. I think this is going the distance. I like New
Oh
York to
yeah.
win, in 7 as well. And it's lucky that they have the home court advantage here. But yeah, are you worried at all about Joel Embiid? We saw him come down on his knee pretty hard. I think it scared a lot of us. Doesn't matter who you're rooting for. You never want to see a superstar go down like that. Now he did come back in the game. Does this bode well for the Knicks that Embiid is kind of questionable, not 100%?
I think it does give the Knicks a little bit of an edge. But from what I've seen with Embiid in the past, there have been times where he has been hurt and he has come back. And there's always that possibility that he'll come back the next night and have that huge 35-point game, 10 rebounds, a few assists here and there, and hit that mark. So it's hard to tell with Embiid. Sometimes he just nails it when
Yeah.
you least expect it.
Yeah, and he started out that first quarter looking amazing as well, and the play that he got injured on was pretty spectacular as well. But Yusuf,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you joining the Moxie Bets Challenge. Congratulations on your win. Anyone you want to give a shout out to at home?
Yes, I'd like to give a shout out to my brother Wob. He helped me through the whole thing and was there helping me watch out. And some of my best friends, Brian Ballard, also a San Francisco 49er fan, Brian Ennis,
Hey.
Andrew Karakis, and my best friend Lauren Horvath. She's always been there to support me through all this as well.
I love it. It takes a village to win an NCAA bracket challenge. And Yusuf, I love that you have such good people around you. Again, thank you so much for joining. And I hope that you repeat next year and come back and talk to us on Moxie Bets again.
Thank you, Lady Luck. Hopefully, you'll be on my side again. I appreciate it, and thank you for the opportunity once again.
This has been Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. Don't forget to follow us on social at Moxie Bets, and we'll see you next time.